Okay, welcome everybody to today's SIRT webinar. I'm Jeanette McKenzie, and with me tonight I have got Sally Catt, Lisa Lee, Tanika Rutherford, Tim Rabbit and Jane Mullen, who are all part of the SIRT subcommittee for staffing guidelines. As the landscape of modern IVF labs continues to evolve, the complexity and precision required in our work has never been greater. The introduction of new techniques, advanced equipment, and the intricacies of managing donors and recipients all contribute to the heightened responsibility we shoulder. With such high stakes, how do we ensure we're maintaining the highest of standards? In this session, we'll explore how the SmART calculator can assist you in measuring and optimizing the effectiveness of your team, ensuring that critical tasks in your lab are performed with the utmost accuracy and care. Join us tonight as we demonstrate this innovative tool and discuss its role in enhancing the efficiency and precision of your IVF lab operations. During the presentation, please feel free to ask questions in the chat function as we go along, which will be answered by my co-hosts. About 4 years ago, concerns began to emerge within our SIRT community regarding increasing workloads, rising overtime and staffing levels. For an ART laboratory to operate effectively, adequate staffing is crucial to address key risk factors that could significantly impact patient care. Over time, the complexity of tasks in the ART lab, such as biopsy procedures and time-lapse annotations, has grown. Inadequate staffing can lead to a higher risk of patient identification errors, challenges in meeting critical procedural time constraints, insufficient training for scientists, difficulty in improving procedures or maintaining equipment, negative impacts on pregnancy outcomes, and increased stress and mental fatigue can potentially lead to staff burnout. Additionally, many SIRT members have expressed concerns about the lack of clear guidelines for determining the appropriate staffing levels needed to ensure a safely operating lab. Ultimately, the risks associated with fertility treatments can be severe. For instance, an incident in the UK involved the transfer of the last available embryo to a patient due to an overworked staff member who failed to perform the necessary checks. Similarly, Carolyn Savage from Ohio had to hand over her baby to its biological parents after a mix-up at a fertility clinic resulted in her being implanted with the wrong embryo. A couple from Cardiff discovered that their last remaining frozen embryo had been mistakenly implanted in another woman who later had it aborted. The same month, a white couple from Northern Ireland gave birth to a mixed-race baby after being given the wrong sperm. These incidents are not isolated. In 2004, a Californian woman received $1 million settlement over a fertility specialist who implanted the wrong embryo and concealed the error until the baby was 10 months old. Similarly, in 1998, a white New Yorker gave birth to a black baby, leading to a complex 2-year legal dispute between the two couples over visitation rights. The purpose of this SIRT position paper is to outline the benefits of ensuring suitable levels of experienced scientific and technical staff in the ART laboratory, as well as identifying the risks that are associated with staffing levels that are below this level. This resulted in the development of a SIRT position paper on staffing levels and creation of a SmART calculator designed to be interactive and used by all labs. This is the timeline for the publication of the SmART calculator. So back in November 2020, the SIRT subcommittee was formed with 10 members. We initially did a literature review and had a big collection of data. We wrote the initial draft, and that involved rewriting and many backwards and forwards with alterations and reviews of the document. The SmART calculator was then developed. In July 2022, it was presented to the SIRT and FSAN's board, and then in August 2023, finally publication in Fertility and Reproduction. And in May this year, the SmART calculator was published on the SIRT member zone of the website. This is the reference for the paper. So it's published in Fertility and Reproduction. So if you haven't downloaded it already, go out and do it so you can make use of this wonderful resource. The paper is divided into 4 sections, which cover a first section about staffing associated risks in the lab, a second section about the education, roles, experience and the competency of IVF scientists, and thirdly, recommendations for CPD and the certification of IVF scientists, and fourthly, the actual calculators themselves. Section 1, the risks associated with the lab, have previously been discussed, so I'll move straight on to the educational and the experience of different roles. The RTAC Code of Practice sets the minimum recommendations required for us to practice. In the RTAC Code of Practice, the scientific director should have 4 years of lab experience in addition to 2 years of managerial experience. Meanwhile, a lab manager is required to have 2 years of experience following their training. Our SIRT paper recommends what we think is best practice. In our guidelines, we recommend that lab support staff and lab technicians should hold at least a level 5 or 6 diploma according to the New Zealand Qualifications Framework or a relevant VET sector course of the Australian Qualifications Framework at level 5 or 6. These staff members are typically responsible for less complex administrative tasks such as laboratory quality control, data entry, specimen reception, and telephone duties. SIRT strongly recommends if the role involves handling human gametes or embryos in culture that the individual should have a tertiary or postgraduate qualification from an approved institution. A trainee embryologist needs a tertiary or postgrad qualification and at least 12 to 24 months training time in all routine lab procedures except for embryo biopsy. A trained embryologist should be able to complete all routine laboratory procedures unsupervised, except for biopsy. It is important for accredited clinics to recognise training from other RTAC units and not treat newly employed trained IVF scientists as trainees if they transfer to a new ART clinic. It is expected that the new clinic will use a conversion training program for new staff to ensure that any technical differences or new equipment used is covered in their orientation. Senior embryologists are recommended to have a minimum of 5 years embryology experience after completing their training. They would also be expected to hold accessory roles, be able to train others, participate in QC, and troubleshooting. A lab manager should have a minimum of 5 years embryology experience after their training and at a minimum hold a master's degree or postgraduate diploma from an accredited institution. Scientific directors should ideally have 10 years of embryology experience after completing their training and also have at least 2 years of managerial or supervisory experience. Scientific directors must hold a master's degree or doctorate from an approved institution in reproductive biology. Section 3 of the paper covers CPD and certification. New Zealand already has mandated by law the requirement to have an annual practicing certificate and participate in a New Zealand recognised CPD program through the Medical Science Council of New Zealand. CPD and registration is not required by law in Australia. The RTAC Code of Practice requires CPD of only the scientific directors and lab managers. The SIRT position is that we recommend CPD for all and strongly encourage registration for Australian IVF scientists. By participating in CPD, you will maintain and expand your professional skills, keep up to date in your knowledge, be aware of trends and innovations, have an appreciation of real-world impact, and continue to improve efficiency and outcomes. In 2015, ESHRE issued broad recommendations suggesting that for laboratories performing up to 150 IVF and/or cryocycles, at least 2 qualified clinical embryologists are necessary. The exact number of required staff should increase depending on the complexity of the procedures and the additional responsibility the lab handles. Our SmART calculator, which was developed based on the US model shared by Alicani in 2014 in fertility and sterility, has been tailored to reflect the specific standards and work entitlements in Australia and New Zealand. One of the key benefits of the SIRT calculator is its comprehensive approach, as it incorporates quality control, administrative tasks, procedure counts, and provides clear timelines for each procedure. The SmART calculator identifies 12 key ART procedures, which are detailed here on this slide. It provides an average time for each procedure, factoring in the complexity of various tasks. For instance, tasks like ICSI and IVF insemination, which are time-intensive and require focused attention, have been assigned complexity factors. The complexity factor processes are also involved in lab procedures that have multiple steps, such as sperm preparation, or those that carry a risk of serious harm to patients. Our calculator also accounts for annual leave and sick leave entitlements in Australia and New Zealand. The time estimates cover all activities related to each ART procedure, and this includes the data entry and all the patient phone calls. However, it's important to note that the calculator does not account for varying levels of experience within your lab. If there are many trainees, additional time may be needed to accommodate their learning curve. The calculator involves 3 separate calculators. The first one is the QC calculator, and that is where it includes all the additional activities associated with running your ART lab, such as temperature checks and transporting embryos. The second calculator is the staffing calculator, and this estimates the number of scientists required based on the procedural workload in the lab. So that's the 12 procedures listed previously, plus it also includes the CPD. And then there's a third calculator, which can be used if you've got a very small lab or you do batching in your lab. Now, it's important to note that the QC calculator must be completed first, and then you will proceed to the staffing calculator, which we'll demonstrate shortly. So when using the SmART calculator, there are some factors to consider. And you need to think about this from your individual lab point of view. Timings. Does your clinic spend more or less time on procedures allocated by the calculator? For example, are your semen assessments manual or automated? Other tasks. Do your embryologists run hormone assays? Do they do a lunchtime meeting? Do they do sperm donor coordination? Do they do a PGT feasibility workup? This will be different in each lab. Experience. If you have more staff in your lab than the calculator suggests, do you have an increased proportion of trainees or juniors? Is the lab efficient and the processes streamlined as much as possible? Do your embryologists work in multiple labs across multiple sites? Does your lab have electronic witnessing, or is your lab using manual witnessing? So now we're going to move on to the live demonstration of the webinar, and Sally Cat is going to demonstrate some various scenarios on the calculator. So I'm going to stop my sharing, and Sally, if you'd like to share the website and show us how the calculator works, please.
And okay, just getting myself visible first.
Okay, great, thanks.
And now we shall share. And that's going to be this one. Okay, so can everybody see our SmART calculator pages? Hopefully, yes. And so this is all found within the SIRT member zone. And we have 4 pages, and I won't dwell too much on the calculator notes except just to show you that they're here, because I think Jeanette's done a wonderful explanation of actually explaining how we got the calculator figures. But if you do want to go into the details with the formulations behind the calculator, you can see it all here. I guess the only thing that was not mentioned clearly was that the professional development is factored in as 4% of an FTE's time. So that equates to approximately 1.5 hours per week in a 4 to 6 week year, which is how we've worked out our year. The 4 to 6 week year includes 4 weeks for holidays and 2 weeks for sick leave. So if you want to go into the detail, we've ended up working out how many hours per FTE per year, and that is 1,656 hours per annum. So I'm just going to go back to, let's just check there's nothing else I want to talk about here. We've discussed the hours. I think we've pretty much discussed all these things. Jeanette's gone through these. So I'm going to go back to the main calculator, which is here. In fact, let's have a look here. So what, as Jeanette said, the first thing you do when you hit the main calculator is you have to assign your laboratory QC hours. And we've fitted out various tasks that tend to be utilized by most clinics. And it's all worked out for you. So if we say that we want, let's just put, say, 1 hour daily, it's all going to be calculated at the bottom as we go along, a subtotal for the year. So some things are done daily, weekly, quarterly, half yearly, and yearly. So I'm just going to scoot through and put sort of a few average numbers in. You may have different numbers, but that's for you guys to fill in. So I'm just 0.5, that should be 0.5. I'm just struggling to find my 5. Oh, sorry. It's a bit dark in this room. Why aren't I finding my 5 point? Just getting performance anxiety here, I guess. 0.5, here we are. And then things like liquid nitrogen tanks, we do that pretty much weekly. I would say we'd spend about 2 hours doing that a week. You may have a different setup, incubator alarms, perhaps 1 hour. Not everybody is doing pipette checks. You may send those off, but just say you do those all in-house. You do that probably on a quarterly basis. You would be checking your timers, and some people wouldn't have a balance. If you do have a balance, you'd probably need to check that before you use it. So that'd be on a weekly basis. Counting chambers is another thing that's probably done on a quarterly basis. This is going to be different for every lab. So gas, I'm just going to leave that blank. Not everybody has a gas analyzer check, so it's okay to leave some things blank. Cribs, most people would have cribs, not all, but that's another one we can add in. And then supervising benchtop incubator services. So you can see the detail that's gone into this. So just, again, that's probably something that's done half yearly. something yearly is all the, you know, supervising and liaising suppliers. Again, that might be done by people out of the lab altogether, then you wouldn't include that at all. Some multi-clinic labs would have movements, internal gamete and embryo movement if you're in a multi-clinic lab, but you may not be in a multi-clinic lab. Let's just say 3 hours for this. Most clinics would be occasionally have to move their gametes, embryos, frozen embryos to other clinics. That happens routinely. I don't know, the 6 hours on a, let's just take that down to 4 hours. That seemed quite excessive. You've got the disposal of frozen gametes and embryos. Most clinics would do that on a weekly basis. And you may have extra things. So you can actually add a row. So maybe you add description here. So you could add, I don't know, maybe you make your own VIT media or something like that, VIT media, and that would be done on a weekly basis. So you can add things in. Let's just say you do that for once a week for an hour or something like that. And you can see how it's totaled up. So subtotal for the year, all those add up and it comes to the grand total of nearly 2,000 hours. And so that automatically populates the main calculator. And so if we go down and have a look at the main calculator, it requires the user to input the numbers of procedures per annum, and then this is what we've calculated how much a procedure should take, and there's a back calculator where you can actually see how that's worked out. And again, as Jeanette said, it involves complexity hours as well. So it might not take exactly that same time, but with the complexity factors, there's 5 complexity factors. So some of it's complexity because it's time restrictive. You have to be doing something at a certain time. You know, it could be ICSI has to be done so many hours after HCG. But it could also mean that you have to do a FIRT check at the same time. So you do get, you know, you do have, that's why we've got the complexity value in there. And so the only thing you guys can do, and it tells you what proportion of FTE here when we add in the cycles. So you can't muck this up at all. You just put your figures in. So I'm going to rattle off a few figures for a reasonably large clinic. So let's just put some of these in. 800 ICSIs. You'd hope that's going to be roughly the same for IVF. FTEs, if it's an established clinic, you're going to have lots of FTEs, FETs, I mean, not FTEs. If you've got PGT, an FT, so FET from a PGT, you can see that that would take a bit longer because you have to choose your embryos. So there's a lot of detail gone into working out how many hours each procedure takes. An IUI, let's just say we do 150 IUIs. Most clinics would be doing semen freezes. It might be in a totally different department, in which case you would have none. TZ freezes. So this is a reasonably big clinic with a lot going on. I'm just putting figures in here just to give you an idea. An oocyte warm, and it's, if you're doing ICSI, and this one's calculated with no PGT, basic semen analysis, again, that might not be in the jurisdiction of the embryo lab, but if it is, you can put some figures in here, and you can see here how your QC task that you put in before is already populated here, and and it's equivalent to about 1.2 FTEs. And so that's all worked out. So now we can work out from here, for this clinic, we're going to require 17 full-time equivalent, 17.1. So easy to do. I could put in, you know, a moderate clinic, we could put in different figures, and, you know, you might end up with only 6 FTEs. Pretty much all clinics would be using the main calculator unless they're very small or are doing it on a batch system. So I can't see if anybody's got any questions on this because I'm just working through it, but we can take questions at the end. So let me just quickly show. So that's the main calculator. So if we look at the batch calculator, this one's very straightforward. It hardly needs any numbers put in by you. It's pretty much worked out on how many days of operation in the year. So let's say we're doing, you know, a week, a month or something. So we'll end up with, say, 48 days. Just say we've got 48 days of operation. Then it comes up that you only need half a staff member. And that's fine if your members are coming in and out from a main clinic. Is that correct? Let's just say 100 days of operation. So that changes to 1 staff member. So for small labs, you only use this calculation if this number is higher than the main calculator. And obviously, you would be having very small amounts in your main calculator for this one to be higher. But please note that for batch or satellite labs, you always need 2 staff per day as a minimum for witnessing, etc. So even though we've got 100 days of operation, 1 staff member, full-time equivalent, you do actually need to employ 2 staff on those days. So it could be, you know, 2 staff, half part-time, but you do actually have to have 2 staff. So hopefully that all makes sense. We'll go back to the main calculator, and then I think I can stop sharing. So you can see in the member zone where it is. It's just, I think it's under resources, I presume, but anyway, you definitely can find it in the member zone. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing and hope that that's made things quite clear on how to do it.
Thanks, Sally.
No problem.
Right, I'll just go back to my presentation because I've got one more slide. So just to acknowledge everybody in the SIRT subcommittee: Sally, Simon, Kylie, Lisa, Jane, Nissa, Tim, Tanika and Kathy. Thank you everyone for all your hard work on the calculator, and just finish up with a picture of us on our Zoom meeting. This was done a lot during COVID lockdown. So thank you all for listening, and I wonder now if anyone's got any questions for us. So we've got a fair few of the authors here online. So we've got a question from Sarah. Thank you all. Fertility preservation is significantly increasing and new procedures becoming more routine in IVF labs such as IVM and OTC. Is there capability for the calculator to include these in the future? Is Anyone want to answer? I guess what I would say is at the moment, you've got the ability to add an extra row into the calculator. Sally, do you have anything else to add to that?
I think we definitely have the ability to put new, tweak it. Like we may get feedback, and we can certainly put extra bits in. And also people can just, think, oh, well, we haven't quite got the line in here, but let's see how many hours it's taking, and maybe they could just sort of use it for now. But sure, we can add, we can, it can be, what's the word? It can be ever evolving.
Evolving. It can evolve, yes.
It can evolve.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
It's SIRT's calculator. Yeah. We've created it, so we can edit it.
Exactly, yes.
Thanks for your question, Sarah. Someone else is typing a question now. Okay, this is the question. Do you have a ratio with egg collections and management team? Who wants to answer that question from my co-host team?
I'm not quite sure what it means. Might need that explained a bit. Anybody else?
Yeah, do you have a ratio with pickups and management team? And thank you for your hard work.
Do we think maybe they're referring to the higher number of OPUs per year, for example, and having extra levels of management kind of helping out at different levels instead of just one scientific director and one lab manager?
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Rudy's typing.
So we didn't make any recommendations on the experience of staff members in the lab.
Yeah, this is more designed as sort of a time in motion for everything to get done. So just the raw numbers were sort of taken into account, and we think we tried to do it so that it was going to be most beneficial or most flexible with each unit to sort of decide where they prioritize, because some units have the most wonderful support staff and things, and they really handle that. So it's definitely not how many science team members, be it management, senior or whatnot, just how many bodies on the ground likely to be needed to get the work done.
Yeah.
And also, if there was a absolutely fresh trainee that couldn't do any procedures, then they wouldn't be counted until they could, and then they would be counted as a half when they could do half the procedures. I think that was the thought. I just reread the Sarah's one, and for sure, I mean, I think as if people are doing fertility preservation and IVM, it'd be really good if they could contact us and let us know how long it takes and a little bit of advice, and then we can easily slot it in as another row. Or we can give you the back end, which is I think it's actually on the website, so you can work it out yourself.
Yeah, how to calculate it yourself.
Yeah.
So we've got another question here from Michelle. So will RTAC use this in audits? What's the incentive for clinics to adopt the recommendations? In the lab, we know we do a lot, but management doesn't always agree.
The whole point. That was the whole point.
That was why it was written.
Yeah, that
There's
you had
been
a
a
tool
huge,
to use.
yeah, there's been a huge review of RTAC and everything. So I think it's going to end up with more teeth, and which will be better for us eventually.
Yeah,
But-
I know. Go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say also that was why there was such the push to potentially delay it a little bit to make sure that we were published appropriately, because the fact that it's now been released in a peer review space gives it once again a little bit more teeth that hopefully RTAC can utilize as well. So
I know the global mark auditors from our tech are aware of this publication, but I think it's quite difficult for them to actually say this is what a clinic must do, but it might be up to the people on the ground that's overworked and tired to actually use it to their advantage to try and sway management that, hey, actually we are like 10 FTEs under. That's probably where it came from. When during COVID, everybody was under a lot of pressure to do a lot of cycles.
and I'm aware of at least one clinic that's adopted that into their most recent enterprise agreement, that they wanted it in line with sort of calculator publications as well. So that's another way that it could be appropriately utilized.
That's excellent.
Oh,
that.
great. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I won't tell you who, but you know.
Yep.
And likewise, it's been really useful. I have a team who felt like they were very understaffed and overwhelmed, and we sat down to the calculator, and they're actually not understaffed at all. And so it was a really good process to go through and say, actually, no, you do actually have enough people with enough experience. We just need to manage the time better. So it can work both ways.
Ah, great. Thanks, Michelle.
We've used in union negotiations. That's good. That's another reason why I think the calculator should be not in the member zone. It should be out there, so for everyone to see. As long as we're not understaffing ourselves by the calculator, when we should be fine.
I was just going to say, if anyone does have anyone in the audience that's listening, if they have any feedback or recommendations based on what we've explained, definitely send info@SIRT an email, and we can always, liaise with the committee and subcommittee members to discuss if we need to add or change anything on the calculator.
Thanks, Tanika. It looks like we've got another question just coming in now, so we'll see what that is.
Come on, Riddy.
Must be a long question.
She was probably clarifying her last question, maybe.
Oh, here we are. CPD points will be us as embryologists responsible or clinic?
That's another thing that hopefully is getting discussed in. Yeah, if you have a point, you should write into the review that was advertised in SIRT. Write to Greg Hunt and give your opinions of what should be done. But I think you're responsible for collecting your CPD points, but SIRT pays for you to be part of the CPD scheme, I believe. They pay for AIM. So, and it's not yet checked by RTAC, but so it's really for for the embryologists at the moment to do it for their own.
But also we did factor what was it, 1.5 hours a week or 4% of the FTE time into the calculator.
We did. So that should be pointed out to clinic management.
It's actually something that's so easily forgotten, isn't it? Like, you know, when it gets really busy, you get the daily stuff done, but you don't think about everything else that needs to be done.
And
it's not
just a reminder to everyone that Seamless and Apace are free of charge for all SIRT members.
And I can tell you CMLS only has 2 people certified so far. I think it's quite hard work to do, but it's great that they did it. And that sort of, I personally think it should be mandated. And it might be eventually, so perhaps people should start practicing.
And remember, in New Zealand it is a mandated thing, so if you are watching from New Zealand, we've got compulsory CPD, but we need our Aussies to get on board with it.
We're so slick.
Good, Simone. I didn't I just looked at it and I saw 2. Simone says there's more people on CMLS now.
Okay. Great. Well, it looks like that is all the questions we've got for tonight. So to all the guests that have joined us, thanks for joining us this evening, and I hope you found it really useful. As Tanika said, if you've got any feedback or things you want to let us know about, just email us at info@SIRT and we'll be happy to see your ideas. So thanks everyone for joining in tonight.
Thanks everyone.
See you later.
Jeanette. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks.
Bye.